Kamala Harris raised a ton of money and also was not very responsible with that money, or at least those who were spending it on her behalf. Let's take a look at this. The Kamala Harris campaign spent $1.37 billion. I feel like Dr. Evil. That is $1.37 billion. And you can see there they raised over $1 billion, but they didn't raise as much as they spent. You do the math there, what's $300 million or so between friends in the amount that was spent over that which was raised. Over $500,000, it's being reported, spent on campaign staffing alone. And you can see in contrast, Donald Trump spending just a little over $10 million on staff, raising less than half as much money as Harris, and spending a fraction of the money that Harris spent, and coming in with a surplus of money that was raised. So the Trump campaign getting more out of less reminds me a little bit of Elon Musk type efficiency when Elon Musk took over X a couple of years ago, and I was getting messages on the platform from people that were concerned that it was all about to end imminently, saying, I've enjoyed following Super 70 Sports. It's been a blast. I hope to see you on the other side. And I thought to myself, well, hey, wait a minute. Just because he's cutting staff doesn't necessarily mean that he's cutting quality. And what Elon Musk did is he cut his staff by about 80%. And as somebody that uses that platform and has used that platform over the past decade more than probably about 99% of people, I think it's safe to say that the platform actually runs better now, and it's more stable now than it used to be, despite the doom calling. So sometimes you can spend less and get more if you're smart about it. And while there might not be a perfect correlation between how somebody would run the economy and how the financials of their campaign worked out, I would say that it's a bad look to come in that far over your budget. And maybe it's a good thing that the person who did that isn't the one that is going to be in charge of the finances of the United States government. Joe Rogan is talking about the election still. As you very likely know, Donald Trump sat down with Joe Rogan in the days before the campaign for an expansive discussion. That's the only kind that Joe really has with his ultra popular podcast. He's the most popular podcaster on planet Earth. And Donald Trump got in there, took advantage of that audience, and sat down for hours with Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan offered the same opportunity to Kamala Harris, and the Harris campaign denied it. They had terms and conditions. And let's listen to Joe Rogan talking about what the Harris campaign wanted for a potential sit down with him as he speaks to Theo Vaughn.
I wanted to talk to Kamala Harris. I'm like, I bet there's a person in there. I bet I can get to that person.
Yeah.
I wanted to find that person. I don't want to hear all the speeches. I don't want to hear, I was raised middle class. I don't want to hear any of that shit.
She's a roller skater. You know that?
No, I would love to find that out.
Yeah.
I would love to talk to her about all kinds of shit. I literally said, like, because there was a few restrictions of things they didn't want to talk about. But I said, I don't give a fuck. I go, get her in here. Like, whatever you want to talk about. And they want to know if I edit. I'm like, there's not going to be any editing. There's no editing.
Yeah.
We're not going to edit. But
yeah, that's the same thing they asked us. Is there an edit? You know?
I just wanted to talk. I feel like you give someone a couple of hours and you start talking about anything. I'm going to see the pattern of the way you think. I'm going to see the way you process ideas. I'm going to see whether or not you're calculated or whether you're just free.
Yeah.
Or are you comfortable with you, or are you projecting things? Like, she's got 80 different accents. How do you decide which one to pull out?
Yeah.
Like, she busts out different accents depending on who she's talking to.
Yeah.
They should have made her talk to a bunch of Chinese folks. I would have loved to hear that accent. I want to see what
I do that too, though. I like to meet people where they're at.
Sure.
You know? Oh, if I see somebody that's, I'll be like, "What's happening, my friend?" It's like I like to meet people where they are.
Yeah, she did one with the Latinos where she talked with a Latino accent. I'm like, this is wild. But she's a chameleon.
Joe Rogan saying that Kamala Harris is a chameleon. I think we already know what that interview would have gone like. I can imagine it in my mind's eye. I can hear it. It would have been phony and fake and fraudulent, just like everything else that she did. The woman lacked authenticity, and she lost for that reason as much as any other reason. And it may have been the leading cause of her downfall. She just came off as phony. He's talking about the various different accents that she used depending upon where she was. It became a joke, really, as she was just trying to appeal to whatever the audience was that was in front of her at that moment. And there was just no real Kamala Harris. At least I couldn't find a real Kamala Harris underneath all of the unburdened by what has been and the nervous laughter and the various dialects that she burned through as she tried to go from pastor to southerner to city person to whatever it was that she thought that she needed to be. She spent the entire campaign trying to be what she thought other people wanted her to be, and ultimately she revealed herself as authentically being nothing. Beneath all of the trappings, beneath all of the posturing, beneath all of the fakery, who really was Kamala Harris? I would say a very nervous, frightened person who did not believe in her ability to navigate difficult interviews. And so it comes not as any surprise, if you've been following this campaign, that they passed on Joe Rogan, or even that they passed on Theo Vaughn, because Kamala was scripted heavily throughout this entire process, did not perform well, and anytime she was in a situation where there was a little bit of a wild card element, she ended up putting her foot in her mouth, and the Joe Rogan podcast would have been a minefield for her to navigate. As it turns out, it wouldn't have affected the end outcome, maybe the margin, but we'll just never know, will we? Let me go now to the international streaming star who is waiting in Nashville, Tennessee, as he does for me to stop yapping at the top of this program. Ronnie T-Shirts joins me. Ron, $1 billion bust, a lot of money spent, a very poor return on investment for the Democrats.
You know what's crazy, though, is everything you just said, she still got 70 million votes. 70 million people still voted for her. Like, that still blows my mind, man. Like, blows my mind. But
you could have put almost anybody against Donald Trump and they would have gotten 70 million votes, though, Ron.
True.
I think for a lot of people, they just see the box as not Trump.
Yeah.
And whoever that is, if you're not Hitler, in their opinion, they're going to vote for you. And so she just was option B. You give the American people a binary choice with Donald Trump after the past almost 10 years, and it's going to split very nearly to 50-50, I think, with almost anyone.
That's true. That's true. So the whole money issue, did you see Trump posted on X Saturday night? Some are calling a little bit of a troll. Did you see what he said? He said, and I'm just going to tell you whether you saw it or not, Ricky. I'm going to read it here real quick. He said, "I'm very surprised that the Democrats who fought a hard and valiant effort in the 2020 presidential election, raising a record amount of money, didn't have money left over." He said, now that they are being squeezed by vendors and others, whatever we can do to help them during this difficult period, I would strongly recommend we, as a party, and for the sake of desperately needed unity, we do it. We have a lot of money left over, and our biggest asset in the campaign was earned media, and that doesn't cost very much. Make America great again. I mean, the dude is just, he's fantastic. Like, he's
That's
so
a pretty magnanimous gesture for a fascist.
Yeah.
Ron. Taking a break from his authoritarian scheming to make such a generous offer to the Democrats. It's mighty big of him. Ron, are you seeing that there's a lot of people? One of the things that we've talked about on this show, so many celebrities and many others who were saying that if Donald Trump won, they're going to leave the country. That's it. If he wins, I can no longer live here. And there's a long roll call of celebrities who said this. And of course, we know that they're not going anywhere, that it's just talky talk. But there's a website called Expatsy. I believe that I'm pronouncing it correct, Ron. And it's a website for Americans who are wanting to investigate immigrating to a foreign land. And apparently, in the hours at the end of Election Day, when the results were becoming clear to the American public, they received something on the order of about a month's worth of web traffic just within a handful of hours from folks who were freaking out and thinking that maybe this is it. They're just going to have to rip the cord on getting the fuck out of America, Ron.
There was a video out on, I guess I saw it. I don't know if I saw it on X or on TikTok, but it was Chachi, Scott Baio. He had a piece of paper and he was just reading all these names of celebrities. I mean, it went on for minutes. It was so fantastic. But that, would you call it expatsy.com?
Expatsy. Yeah, apparently. I don't know.
So
if
I
that's
wonder,
the web address, but
so
I doubt
guess
too many of our viewers are planning to leave the country.
Yeah. So I'm just super curious, as you said that it had a lot of traffic. I wonder how many people are actually moving forward with, next steps, actually trying to figure this out. That would be interesting.
Probably very, very few, Ron. I had a friend who is a liberal friend that on social media some months ago, this may have been anywhere between 6 months and a year ago, talking about how bad America was and saying, well, I would move if I could afford to. And I thought, well, that's a typical sort of bullshit thing to say. It's like, here you are in this country. You've had every opportunity to succeed. You're in your 50s, even living in the finest country in the world to do something positive for yourself. You haven't achieved at a level that you can afford to leave here, but you want to bitch about it on social media all the time. I have no use for the people that make grand statements like this with no intention to actually cash that check. I think it's fine to be critical of things that you see in our society that you don't like, but I think that it's much more noble and much more patriotic, obviously, to want to discuss those things, work them out, and try to move forward in some kind of a positive way, rather than saying, when things don't go my way, I'm just going to leave. But I haven't heard much from Stephen King lately. Rob Reiner has gone silent, at least the last time that I checked over on X. Some of these folks have hushed since the results of a week ago, Ronnie.
I'm just looking at this picture, the Liberal Airlines, and
Look
I'm
at
just
that
trying
bus.
to pick up. It's so funny.
I mean, look, it's got like half the cast of The View there right up front, so you can drive that motherfucker right across the border and get out of here. Rob Reiner still hasn't posted anything since Election Day, Ron.
I've seen people on social media suggest that a GoFundMe should be started to pay for all these people that, say they want to, but then claim that they can't. I would absolutely donate to that.
I would kick in, $100 to help somebody's dreams come true, Ron. So, yeah, we've got some election fallout, but Remember, Ron, there's one general presidential election every 4 years. We have 5 elections a week on this program. Let's go to America's poll of the day, shall we? Over at Super 70 Sports on X, where the eagle always soars high. That eagle says, get the fuck out of here if you don't like this country. Let's take a look at the fine options that we can avail ourselves of as Americans. Ron, I have 4 things here that are good or at least debatably good. And this poll comes to you courtesy of myself and a dear friend who co-authored this with me, Ron. And here we go. The 2 options that are mine are The Undertaker, one of the most outstanding sports entertainers in the history of what I called wrestling when I was a kid, but I'm talking about the WWE's outstanding dead man, The Undertaker. I also contributed Frogger, Ron, the arcade classic, always one that I enjoyed. You got to get across that highway and then hop on some logs and eventually get your frog safe on a lily pad. And then my friend contributed Rick James, the super freak himself. I'm Rick James, bitch. And then you were asking me, Ron, before the program, clarifying what the first option was. My friend also contributed Hooch to the poll. And you were asking me, what's Hooch? Is that Turner and Hooch? The old Tom Hanks movie? And I said, no, it's Hooch. It's just a bunch of alcohol, maybe in a red Solo cup. And then it just gets you all drunk and fucked up at a party, Ron. Did you ever drink Hooch back in the day?
So what I have learned in my my advanced years is that depending on what part of the country you're from, that was called something different. So at Ohio State, we called it Harry Buffalo. Some people call it trash can punch. Definitely Hooch. Heard Jungle Juice. You have any others that you've heard of?
No, you're just educating me. We called it Hooch.
Okay, yeah, we called it
my day.
We called it Harry Buffalo, and it was in a trash can, and you dipped it in, and it was tasted like Capri Sun and knocked you out like a sledgehammer. So I also am a big fan of Frogger, which I know I don't love video games, but that was one of my go-tos. I think it was because it was relatively simple. I didn't have the mental dexterity to play some of the more advanced ones.
Yeah, it was a little more welcoming to to those of us that were maybe not world champion arcade people.
I mean, if George Costanza can set the record on one, then it's relatively simple. That was such a good episode. I'm going with Rick James, the super freak. Did you ever see the documentary of him on, I believe it was Showtime? If you haven't seen it,
I've never seen it. No,
dude, it's fascinating. Like absolutely fascinating. Like his origin story is not what you would think it is. It's just an absolutely fantastic, interesting documentary. So I'm going Rick James.
I'm going to go with The Undertaker. So producer Tim, he's probably heading straight for the Hooch, if I know him. Nah, he's going to go Frogger, probably.
Rick James too.
Look at that. Nope, Tim's getting his super freak on and going with Rick James as well. And Frogger, Tim checked a Rick James album out of the library and had to hide it from his father, Ron. There's a checkout from the library. Take that up to some old, crusty librarian. Your Rick James album. She probably was judging Tim silently, condescending down her nose at the young man. Tim's probably got it in a paper bag, taking it home, trying to get in the house and discreetly listen to it without his dad blocking him.
Listening
so
to
I don't know,
Mary
man.
Jane.
Look, the Hooch Hooch didn't do so well, but it's interesting to know that maybe approximately about 1/10 of our audience just doesn't give a fuck. And they're like, hey, Undertaker, Frogger, and Rick James are nice, but let's just pour as many alcohols as we can into a bucket and get this fucking party started, Ron.
Clearly.
I don't know. Hooch is a difficult thing to contemplate before noon, at least. My life hasn't gone far enough off the rails that I haven't had Hooch in years, bro.
That's what I was going to say, man.
It's probably been 30 years since I've had Hooch. I don't think the current version of myself would probably handle it very gracefully.
Yeah, man. The last time I had it was a little over 8 years ago, my 50th birthday party. It was kind of an 80s college theme. And so we had Trash Can Punch or Harry Buffalo or Hooch. And so that was the last time I've had it.
Now there's a party.
Oh,
turning 50 and riding the Harry Buffalo.
It was quite the party.
I bet that was a good time. I wish that I had known you then,
yeah,
Ron.
You missed me. You missed me by I think I missed you by 2 years. 2 years earlier, and you would have been there.
Let's talk about Deion Sanders, Ron, because
let's do it.
He's one of our favorite people in college football. And I don't know if you have seen this or not, but this is the merging of two of our most covered football stories. We like to talk about the Colorado Buffaloes, not the Colorado Harry Buffaloes, although maybe that would add a little bit of color to the team name. I would be in favor of that. But we've talked a lot about Deion and what he's doing with Colorado. We've talked a lot about the Dallas Cowboys and what a shit show this 2024 season has become for them. Dak Prescott, of course, out for the rest of the year. They're sinking, and it's completely over for them if we're being real. Bovada has Deion Sanders at even money to be the next Dallas Cowboys head coach. What would you think about Deion leaving Boulder, going to Dallas, and taking over the Cowboys?
I mean, it makes a lot of sense if you factor in all the different variables. One, we talked about this early on in our show with Trey, is I personally don't think he has any interest in staying in Colorado once his kids are gone. So there's that. I think Jerry Jones is just crazy enough to do something like this. So there's that. He played for the Cowboys. And I think who would you, if you think about Deion Sanders, the football player, don't you think about him with that star on his helmet? Because that's what I think about versus the Niners and the Falcons and the Redskins. It's the Cowboys is who I think about. So it just makes a lot of sense
Ravens?
to me.
I always think of the Ravens, right?
Do you really?
Okay. Yeah.
No, you don't.
Yeah, he did. I
know he played there, but that's not
you were. I thought you were saying, did he really play there? I was like,
no,
yeah,
I know he played there. I'm saying you didn't. You don't really think.
I think of the Falcons first.
Okay.
Because I think of Chris Berman, Deion returning a punt and
playing baseball at the same time for the Braves.
Prime time. And, Deion kicking the legs up and whatever. He was must see back in the day, man. Before Devin Hester.
Absolutely.
Back in the day, it was like Deion Sanders and Billy White Shoes Johnson were the two greatest return men that I'd ever seen in my life. And every time Deion was back deep to take a punt, you didn't want to miss it. There's only a handful of return guys in my life that you're like, hey, hang on a minute. I don't want to miss this punt. And Deion was in that category. So no, I think of Deion at Atlanta Fulton County Stadium with the Atlanta Falcons back in the late 80s, early 90s. But secondly, I think of him as a Cowboy.
Yeah, the Falcons were the first place that he played, and he played for the Braves at the same time. So I do see that. But for me, I see that star on the helmet. But I think it makes perfect sense that he's the Cowboys coach next year. I'm not saying that he'll do a good job, but I think it makes perfect sense that that's where he'll end up.
Stephen A. Smith has said that the Cowboys should tank, go for the number 1 pick, draft Shedeur Sanders, and bring Deion in, bring them in together.
I don't really feel like they need to tank at this point, do they? Like, I think it's just going to happen naturally.
Well, there's some competition of bad teams too.
Yeah.
There's some bad teams in the NFL right now. So they might have to reach back and find something a little worse if they want the number 1 pick. Because there are some sorry ass teams in the NFL.
Yeah, I think
Cooper Rush, he has all the intangibles to make that happen. Ronnie, Micah Parsons making some comments about the state of the Dallas Cowboys, of course, their defensive standout, talking about Mike McCarthy, and in doing so, whether it was on purpose or whether it wasn't, we'll get your thoughts on this, Ron, making some comments that were not very charitable to his head coach. Let's take a look at what Micah Parsons had to say.
Mike's on the final year of his contract, so outside there's of course going to be questions. What's the sentiment inside the locker room, and what do you tell people who are wondering about whether McCarthy will be your coach next year?
You know, that's above my pay grade about if Mike is coaching again next year. But, you know, all coaching aside, you know, Mike can leave and go wherever he wants. But the guys, I kind of feel bad for is guys like Zach Martin and guys who might be on their last year or on their way out, you know, because that's who I wanted to hold the trophy for. You know, you want to win games and do great things with those type of legends who put in more time and work than Mike McCarthy ever did. So those are the kind of guys that I have so much sympathy and hurt for.
All right, Ron, is he throwing shade at his head coach, or did that just not come out quite exactly right and now we need something to talk about?
I think the latter, because it might have been one of those things where he was saying something that was true, but it just came out sounding bad. Like maybe the assistant coaches really do put in way more effort and more time at the offices than the head coach does. And so he's just stating a fact, and it just came out sounding like Mike McCarthy doesn't work very hard. So I don't know for sure, but to me, it sounds like it just kind of came out wrong.
I think he was trying to be nice to teammates, but you know, it's not Micah Parsons' first rodeo with the media. I almost wonder if there's not a little bit of subtext there for Mike McCarthy, even if it's subconscious subtext, but I think that this is it for Mike McCarthy. Jerry Jones has reaffirmed that it would be very unlikely for him to make a head coaching change in the middle of a season, but Mike McCarthy's playing the string out. I can't imagine a scenario where he's the head coach of the Cowboys next year.
Oh, there's no chance that McCarthy's the coach next year. But you know, the thing with Micah Parsons is when you're, you know, arguably the best player on the team or one of the best players on the team, you can kind of say anything you want without any retribution. So maybe it really was what he thinks. So I don't know. It is something for us to talk about.
They had a conversation. They handled it internally, men, according to Mike McCarthy. Mike had to say something to him about it. Ron, let's get an update here on the San Jose State transgender volleyball player saga. As you are aware, Ron, they have an assistant coach, Melissa Beatty-Smoose, who was suspended without pay back at the beginning of November, I believe since November the 2nd. And she was on Fox News yesterday, Ron, saying that fair play is being taken away from women. We need more and more people to do the right thing and fight this fight for fairness and equity in women's sports. What do you think of this issue right now, Ron? I know that for a long time you were saying we need more proactivity on the side of those that are against this. We seem that we're starting to see more of it. We reported on what happened at San Diego State yesterday. Of course, we've talked about the Nevada women's volleyball team, which was outspoken about why they refused to play San Jose State and Blair Fleming, the transgender player. Are you happy with the progress that you're seeing in this, or do you think more still needs to happen?
Well, I mean, I guess if we're looking at the big picture, I'm happy with the progress. At least pendulum's moving in the correct direction. But this is just one of those things where I kind of feel like, why do we have to have a slow process there? I mean, this can be immediate. Like it's over. And I think with Trump being elected president, I think you're going to see somewhere very quickly after January 20th that there's going to be some mandates coming down from the federal government that this isn't going to happen anymore.
It's one of those things that I believe we will eventually look back on years from now and we'll wonder how it ever got this far.
Absolutely.
I think sometimes we get so wrapped up in certain things that are happening culturally that you can't see the forest for the trees, or vice versa, or whatever the saying is, Ron. And so to me, man, we got to step back about 1,000 miles from this issue, look at it and ask ourselves, what the fuck have we been doing in our society to think that this is in any way fair or equitable or right for women? And it's being pushed and promoted by the same side that is all up in arms about what's going to happen to women. I've never understood the disconnect between the left crying about everything. Well, women's rights are over. You know, Donald Trump got elected. I guess that's it for the modern American woman. They're cooked now. But at the same time, hey, take all of these transgender refugees from men's sports and just embrace them into women's sports, no matter how good they are, no matter how unfair it is. I have a difficult time wrapping my mind around how they can hold both of those positions simultaneously, Ron.
Yeah, well, you know, if the reports that I saw are correct, it was like 85% of the American public was against this happening. So it's not just on one side of the political spectrum. It's on both sides. So it's not a thing that people are okay with. I mean, there's obviously a few people that are okay with it. And I would bet that those people don't have a dog in the fight, meaning they don't have a kid playing on the other team, or they don't have a kid on that team that's being displaced from the roster because that person is better. They're just, again, it's part of their agenda. And I think if you really ask them if they thought it was fair, they'd say it wasn't fair. I mean, this is going to end relatively quickly, I believe, once Trump's in office.
Yeah, the American public, by a wide margin, just agrees with the common sense perspective on this that you and I share, that competition for women should be competition between biological women, because that protects the fairness and integrity and opportunities for women within women's sports. And safety as well, absolutely. Particularly when we start talking about things like boxing, where the objective of the sport is to punch people in the head. It's bizarre that it's gotten to this point, and I certainly hope, as you do, that we're on track to see this chapter of madness come to a close in the relatively near future. Let's take a look at what I'm tweeting, shall we? Back over at Super 70 Sports on X. Ronnie, I tweet things, as you know, and here's one for you that I think is rather incredible, Ron. I know that the only clubs that you need in your bag are a 7-iron and a putter. Golf is not your favorite thing, but I also know that you're just a big sports fan and you appreciate incredible feats, no matter what sport that it happens in. And I tweeted this before Sunday's finish I believe it was the Charles Schwab Championship, the year-ending event on the Champions Tour. Bernhard Langer, the two-time Masters champion, a World Golf Hall of Famer, and the greatest senior golfer of all time, without any doubt, Ronnie, won his tournament this week on Sunday, the final event of the year, making it 18 years in a row that he has posted a win on the PGA Champions Tour. That is the circuit for golfers that are 50 and over. So every year from his age 50 season through his age 67 season, Bernhard Langer has posted at least one win. He has 47 victories on the senior tour now, I believe. And I think a dozen of them are majors. If those numbers aren't exactly accurate, they're very close. How in the world, Ron, can you imagine? He's playing the best 50 and up golfers in the world, many of whom are 50, 51, 52, 53, 54. This guy is pushing 70, and he's still winning. I think it's phenomenal.
Yeah, man, this is truly mind-blowing when you actually think about it. When you think about 18 years in a row, I mean, obviously his age is a huge factor in this, is why it's so crazy and so impressive. But just 18 years in a row of winning anything at any sport at any age, that's almost impossible, Ricky. Like, it's an almost impossible feat. Like, this should be up there now with some of the most amazing accomplishments in sports history. And on top of that, the dude looks amazing for 67. Like, holy crap. Like, good job,
It's
Bernhard.
really difficult to win on the Champions Tour past age 60. It happens once in a while, but that doesn't happen a lot. And for this guy to have done it now, he's now won in his 60s many times over. And it's crazy, and I wouldn't write off his ability to come back next year and win again, because he obviously doesn't seem to be slowing down very much. He had injured his Achilles in a pickleball incident, Ron. He had a pickleball injury, fucked up his Achilles, and that cost him a significant portion of this season. So not only is he winning at this advanced age, but he's rebounding from a serious injury to do it, which, as you and I both know, being over 50, nagging injuries are what will fuck up your performance more than anything.
Yeah, man. If you would have done this tweet 8 years ago and said that he'd won 10 years in a row, I would have had pretty close to the same reaction. And he's almost doubled that now.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Let's get to one more. What else am I tweeting? All right, well, we can stick on golf here. I tweeted yesterday, what's the most fun you've ever had at a live sporting event? What's the best time you ever had attending a sporting event? Doesn't even necessarily have to be the pros. There were some people in the comments who were talking about things that they had done, or family members, I believe. Tiger Woods winning the 2000 PGA in a playoff with Bob fucking May was the best time that I ever had, Ron. That was the third leg of the Tiger Slam. He had won the U.S. Open by 15 shots at Pebble Beach just a couple of months before. He had won the British Open at St. Andrews by 8 shots just the previous month. And then he came to Valhalla in Louisville, Kentucky, and Bob May gave him a dogfight. Ended up going to a 3-hole playoff, and that picture there of Tiger pointing is when he finally took the lead on the first playoff hole. But I think that's the most electric environment that I've ever been in, Ron. What would be your choice for most fun event?
I mean, it's going to be pretty obvious that I am going to come at you with something to do with Ohio State. So, I was at the first national championship for Ohio State in 2003 with Tyler and Lori and my best friend Scott, and that was absolutely amazing. But in 1999, I was in Knoxville in the elite. I got to see Ohio State in the Elite Eight against, I believe it was St. John, to get them into the Final Four, which was the first time they'd been in the Final Four in my lifetime. And it was back then I was still just a big college basketball fan. And so as much as I love Ohio State football, Ohio State getting to the Final Four and realizing, oh my God, they're going to the Final Four. It was, the one thing I remember from that is I walked out of that arena with an absolute splitting headache that I couldn't shake because it was just so much screaming and stomping, and it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. Never forget it.
I'm shocked that it's an Ohio State event, Ron, but not football though. So you actually did surprise me a little bit. Let's take a look at, let's get one comment up here. Johnny Oldfield, one of our friends, says Darryl Grant's game-sealing pick six. He drew up that pick six like AOC. Ron, in the NFC Championship game at RFK Stadium. He ran a pick six. Yeah. Tim Wall. Sorry. He's forever now. I'm going to think of that joker every time there's a pick six for the rest of my life. Unfortunately.
Hey, OutKick fans on YouTube, if you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button and make your way over to OutKick.com where you can watch the full episode.